Guys, so hopefully you're all doing really good. Today we are continuing this journey on the release, but like all of my videos that I put onto the channel, they are massively formed by people that I am seeing in real examples. So with the recent videos when I've been talking about the release, they're pieces of information which I give to other golfers which are really beneficial to other golfers. So therefore I make the assumption that it'd be beneficial to you guys as well. And that definitely is happening. I meet more and more students all of the time that have watched some of the content or binged on a lot of the content on the channel, and their understanding and their swing changes are, really, really impressive. But what sometimes happens, and that's why I wanted to talk about this today, is I met a student today for the first time, and what happens is that they built up this really good understanding of the release and this really good understanding of rotation in the downswing. But there was a massive oversight, and the oversight was really sort of hurting their chance of progression. So when we got hitting a few shots and we got chatting, one of the pieces of information was, look, I'm hitting the hits ball quite low, and was very culpable of missing it both left and right for a right-handed golfer, right? And it was just a case of, okay, let's have a little look, hit a few shots. And then I kind of started to notice there was a little bit of a habit forming. Now, I think there's a lot of amateur golfers that have the same issue. So let's put it into context. The first thing is the low ball flight. Now, the reason why the student had such a low ball flight was because he was coming down very vertically. Okay, now that doesn't mean he's coming over the top. It just means that the shaft was coming down on plane, it was just coming down on a more vertical plane. So instead of coming down on an angle like so, it was coming down on a more vertical angle. Now moving this way will have the potential steepening aspect on the swing, which could lower the flight. So what was happening is he was aware of this, and what he was sort of doing was to try and get the club more on the inside, to hit more up on the ball, to get more height. What he was starting to do was whip the club around him. Now, the issue for this golfer was not only is it an issue to whip the club behind you and underneath you, that is a problem, but what's also an issue is when you have a slightly strong grip. So what I've talked about this once before on the channel, and that's why I wanted to talk about it again, because it was quite some time ago. The takeaway is not always the biggest problem in the golf swing. Okay, so sometimes we all get sold the narrative, well, if you take the club on the inside, that means you're going to come over the top. That's not true, right? You could take the club on the inside and drop it down on the inside. You could take the club on the inside and re-establish finding playing. But where it does lend itself a problem is the student had a slightly strong grip. Okay, so probably just over 3 knuckles was showing on that lead side. Now that's quite common. I don't meet many golfers nowadays that are gripping it weaker. I think golfers have realised the importance of rotating their arms to square the face, and they grip it stronger. But the problem is, and I'm going to pause at left arm horizontal, which is this position here. Now, what the student was doing was demonstrating a position like so. Now, what was happening is if you have a slightly strong grip, and if you have the tendency to get the club moving under plane, as you take it into this position, it will flatten the wrist. And if you flatten the wrist with a slightly strong grip and you get off plane, so see the way the club's a little sort of laid off in this position, so it's not pointing down towards my ball to target line, it's pointing a bit more this way, that club face is going to close down in a big way on you. And that was what was happening, you see. He was getting the club face really closed, then he was trying to do things to come back, but the problem was, the chance of him hitting it straight was just extremely slight, and there was a lot of compensations for it. Now, I don't always see golfers who grip it strong and do the same thing, but I personally think it is a potential problem. And I think what I want to do is just want to make sure that you guys are just keeping an eye on your backswing positions equally. Now, I think the best point of reference is the old school lead arm horizontal position. And all I'm going to do in today's video is just put an alignment stick down on the ground, and that would represent your target line, and you can do that down the driving range. And then I'm just going to grab a T-peg, and I'm going to shove it in the butt end of the golf club. And what that's going to do is that's going to act as a visual cue to point. By the time I get to lead arm horizontal, I'm going to concentrate on pointing the shaft through the line, okay, as my hands stay over my feet. And then I'm going to point the T-peg down towards that line. And what that will do is that will produce a wrist angle which will have still an element of, shall we say, extension. And that's my big thing about today's lesson. So I'm not saying you're going to be exactly the same as my student who has a slightly strong grip and closes the face. But what I would be careful of is there's definitely a lot of golfers that think you have to flatten the wrist. And I think there's a difference here. What's important is that your lead wrist should flatten in the backswing, not be completely flatter in the backswing position. So that means when you grip the club, you will create quite a large, depending how you hold it, but you'll create quite a large amount of angulation on the back of the lead forearm and the lead wrist. Now, as you progressively move that golf club back, it should flatten, but it doesn't mean it has to flat completely. And if you start doing that and making that potential mistake, then you could end up very much like the student who came to visit today, who had been doing all of the correct things in the downswing, thought that he was doing all of the things in the downswing incorrectly because of the ball flight, and it was just a naughty little habit in that first move. So I think it's worth double checking, because it's not uncommon, and I'm actually suggesting quite a few people recently that I've met to also use a swing guide. And the swing guide is this type of contraption, which again goes on the front of the shaft like so, and I tend to get most people to pop it about an inch or two actually onto the grip, and it's the same thing. You get this in line with the club face in the address position, so you'd have it like so for those of you that are familiar with this product, and then all you're going to do is, again, at that lead arm horizontal position, you should just notice that, okay, if it's not completely on your lead forearm, it should be in line with your forearm, basically meaning that is offline. And that's where my student was, and you want to double check you're not in that position as well, because the narrative of playing golf with a strong club face is potentially true, but the issue is that if you're slightly off plane or you have some sort of quirk, you're going to get massively exposed and you won't be able to control the club face. And as I'm sure we all guessed, it's a pretty important feature of the golf swing. So go and check it out. I'll catch up with you guys again really, really soon.